When you stop reaching out, something very specific starts happening in his mind, and most people don't realize how powerful that moment really is. At first, he notices the quiet, not in a dramatic way, not instantly panicking, but in a subtle pause. He checks his phone. Nothing. He tells himself you're busy. He tells himself it's no big deal. But his mind has already registered the change. Routine has been broken. And when routine breaks, awareness begins. When you go silent, when you don't reach out the way you used to, the first thing that happens in his mind is not panic, it's reflection. And reflection is powerful because it forces a man to sit with his own thoughts. See, when you're always present, always checking in, always initiating, he never has to think. He just reacts. He responds. He stays comfortable. But the moment that silence appears, his mind slows down, and slowing down makes room for awareness. He notices the gap. He feels the shift. Even if he doesn't say it, even if he acts normal on the surface, something inside him pauses. At first, he tells himself stories. He tells himself, you're busy, you're tired, you'll text later. That's his way of staying in control. But the silence lingers, and now his brain starts replaying patterns. He realizes you always reached out at certain times. He realizes you always showed up in certain ways. And now that pattern is gone. When a pattern breaks, the brain doesn't ignore it, it studies it. He starts thinking, not because he wants to, because he has to. This is where reflection deepens. He starts looking back at conversations. He remembers moments where you gave more than he did. He remembers times you were patient, understanding, consistent. Things he didn't fully appreciate in the moment suddenly feel heavier now that they're missing. Reflection doesn't come with noise, it comes in quiet moments. Late at night, during a drive, when he checks his phone and realizes nothing has changed since the last time he checked. What's important here is that this reflection is internal. You're not pushing him to think. You're not asking questions. You're not demanding clarity. Your silence is doing the work for you. And when a man reflects without pressure, the truth surfaces faster. He starts questioning himself instead of questioning you. He wonders if he misjudged the situation. He wonders if he underestimated your value. Reflection shifts the focus inward, and that's where real awareness is born. As reflection continues, he becomes emotionally alert. Little things start triggering thoughts of you, a song, a place, a routine, because reflection connects emotion to memory. He's no longer thinking about what you're doing. He's thinking about what he felt when you were present. And that's a dangerous place for a man who hasn't defined his feelings yet, because feelings become clearer when they're not constantly stimulated. This is the moment where reaction turns into realization. Reaction is fast and shallow. Reflection is slow and deep thinking leads to emotional honesty, even if he never says it out loud. Your silence forces him to confront something he avoided before. Not you, himself. And once the door opens, it doesn't close easily. That's why silence isn't weakness. It's space. And space gives the mind permission to see clearly. When you stop reaching out, you don't lose him in thought. You become the thought. When you stop reaching out, something shifts in a way he never expected, because the power quietly moves back to you. Not through control, not through manipulation, but through absence. See, power in emotional dynamics often sits with the person who cares less or appears less available. When you were always the one checking in, initiating conversations, making sure the connection stayed alive, he never had to wonder. He never had to chase clarity. He could relax in certainty. But the moment you step back, certainty disappears, and with it goes the comfort he was standing on. At first, he doesn't call it power. He just feels off balance. He realizes he's no longer setting the pace. He's no longer the one deciding when communication happens. That subtle loss of control unsettles him. Men are wired to feel stable when they understand the rhythm of a situation. Your silence breaks that rhythm. Now he's reacting to you instead of you reacting to him, and that shift hits his ego before it hits his heart. He starts checking his phone more often, even if he won't admit why. He notices that you're no longer orbiting around his availability. That changes how he sees you. You're no longer predictable. And unpredictability creates value. It signals independence. It tells him without words that your life continues whether he engages or not. That realization quietly elevates you in his mind. You're not waiting. You're choosing. As the power shifts, his thoughts start revolving around one question: what changed? Not because he wants to accuse you, but because he feels the loss of leverage. When you stopped reaching out, you took away the reassurance he leaned on, and now he has to earn information instead of receiving it freely. That makes him more aware of his own actions. He starts wondering if he should have shown more effort, more interest, more presence. Power doesn't announce itself. It shows up in the questions people start asking themselves. What's important here is that you didn't say a word. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't defend your decision. Silence allows the power shift to happen naturally. When you explain, you negotiate. When you stay quiet, you observe. And observation keeps you grounded while he becomes emotionally unsettled. He feels the distance, and distance makes people reassess value. As days pass, he realizes something uncomfortable. He doesn't know where he stands anymore. And not knowing creates urgency. The dynamic has flipped. Before, he could assume your availability. Now he has to consider the possibility that you've emotionally stepped forward without him. That possibility forces him to either step up or step away. He can no longer stay passive. This is where real power lies, not in control, not in silence as punishment, but in self-respect. Your lack of reaching out communicates strength. It says you won't overextend to be chosen. And when a man senses that, he either rises to meet it or feels exposed by it. Either way, the shift is permanent. When the power moves back to you, his behavior changes because his perspective changes. And once a man sees you differently, he can't unsee it. When you don't reach out, when you choose stillness instead of chasing clarity, something deep starts happening in his mind, and that is questioning his own feelings. See, as long as you were present, consistent, and emotionally available, he didn't need to define anything. He could enjoy the connection without labeling it. He could feel without responsibility. But the moment you pull back, the emotional fog lifts, and his mind is forced to ask questions he avoided answering before. At first, he doesn't question love. He questions discomfort. He asks himself why this silence feels heavier than it should, why your absence is louder than other people's presence. He tells himself he's fine, his emotions don't agree, and when emotions and logic don't align, a man starts paying attention. He realizes he's thinking about you when he shouldn't be. He's distracted. He's replaying moments that didn't seem important before, but now feel meaningful. This is where confusion turns into awareness. He begins separating habit from emotion. Was he just used to you being there, or did you actually matter to him? That question lingers, because if it were just habit, the silence wouldn't bother him this much. Habit fades quietly. Emotion resists, and resistance is what he feels. He starts noticing that other conversations don't hit the same. Other connections feel empty. He compares without meaning to, and that comparison keeps pointing back to you. As he questions his feelings, memories surface uninvited. The way you listened, the way you supported him without asking for anything in return, the way you showed up when he was unsure of himself. These memories weren't powerful when you were available, but now they carry weight. Because now he understands something important. You didn't just fill time, you filled space in his life, emotional space. Questioning his feelings makes him vulnerable, and vulnerability is uncomfortable for a man who hasn't accepted how deeply he cares. He wonders if he made a mistake by not expressing himself sooner. He wonders if his silence pushed you away, and once that thought enters his mind, fear follows. Not fear of being alone, fear of losing someone who mattered more than he admitted. What changes everything is that these realizations come without your influence. You didn't convince him, you didn't explain your worth. You allowed him to discover it on his own. And self-discovery is powerful because it feels real. It doesn't feel forced. When a man arrives at emotional truth by himself, it sticks. He can't dismiss it as pressure or timing. It becomes his truth. As the questioning deepens, clarity begins forming. He starts understanding that feelings ignored don't disappear. They grow louder in silence. He sees now that emotional avoidance only delayed the inevitable. The silence didn't create feelings. It revealed them. And once revealed, they demand action. That's why pulling back doesn't make you forgettable. It makes you unforgettable. Because now he isn't reacting to your presence. He's responding to his own emotions. And once a man starts questioning his feelings, he's already closer to answering them than he realizes. When you don't reach out and he notices the silence, the first thing that gets shaken is his ego. At the beginning, his ego tells him everything is fine. It tells him he's in control, that you'll come back around, that this pause doesn't mean anything. Ego protects comfort, and comfort hates change. So he leans on pride to avoid feeling anything deeper. He convinces himself that if you really cared, you'd be the one to break the silence. That belief keeps him steady for a moment, but only for a moment. As time passes, ego starts losing its grip. Pride works best when there's proof, and silence offers none. He can't see what you're thinking. He can't measure where he stands. And when a man can't measure his position, ego slowly turns into curiosity. He starts wondering what you're doing, not in a controlling way, but in a questioning way. He asks himself why you're so calm, why you didn't chase, why you didn't explain. Curiosity creeps in because ego no longer has answers. That curiosity becomes personal. He starts paying attention to small details he ignored before. Your last message, your tone, your timing. He looks for signs he may have missed. Ego told him he was secure, but curiosity tells him something changed. And curiosity is dangerous because it opens the door to concern. Once a man becomes curious, he starts imagining possibilities. And imagination can't be controlled the way facts can. Concern enters quietly. He doesn't panic, but he feels unsettled. The idea that you might be emotionally moving forward without him sits in his chest. He wonders if you finally reached a limit. He wonders if he underestimated your patience. Concern doesn't shout, it lingers. It follows him into quiet moments. It shows up when he's alone. And the more he thinks, the more his ego softens. This is where emotional awareness starts forming. Ego kept him focused on himself. Concern shifts his focus to you. He begins considering how his actions may have affected you. He replays moments where he could have shown more effort. He remembers times you waited for him to lead and he didn't. Concern forces accountability, even if he never admits it out loud. What's powerful is that you didn't demand this shift. You didn't confront him. You didn't ask for reassurance. Your silence allowed his ego to run out of excuses on its own, and once ego is quiet, honesty gets space. He starts realizing that your presence wasn't guaranteed, it was a choice you were making. And now that choice feels uncertain. As curiosity deepens, concern becomes emotional. He doesn't just wonder where you are, he wonders if he still matters to you. That's a turning point. Because when a man starts questioning his importance in your life, he's already emotionally invested. Ego would never allow that question. Only care does. This internal shift changes how he sees you. You're no longer someone who waits. You're someone who knows when to step back. And that realization stays with him because ego can be rebuilt, but awareness can't be undone. When you don't reach out and he starts feeling the distance, fear quietly enters his mind. And this is the kind of fear that changes everything. Not fear that makes him panic, not fear that makes him dramatic, but fear of losing something he didn't realize he valued so deeply. See, as long as you were present, fear had no reason to show up. He felt secure, he assumed access. He believed time was unlimited. Silence removes that illusion, and once the illusion is gone, fear steps in to tell the truth. At first, he resists it. He tells himself he's overthinking. He tells himself people come and go. But fear doesn't argue loudly, it repeats itself softly. It shows up in quiet moments. It shows up when he's alone. It shows up when he realizes you're no longer emotionally within reach. And that's when emotional clarity begins. Fear sharpens awareness. It strips away distractions and forces him to focus on what actually matters. He starts realizing that your absence feels different from anyone else's. This isn't just someone who stopped texting. This is someone whose energy filled a space in his life. Someone who understood him. Someone who made him feel seen without demanding anything in return. Fear highlights contrast. He compares life with you present versus life with you distant, and the difference becomes impossible to ignore. This fear pushes him to reassess his behavior. He starts seeing moments where he was emotionally unavailable, moments where he delayed decisions, moments where he assumed you'd always be there. Fear forces accountability because it asks one dangerous question: what if it's too late? And once that question enters his mind, emotional clarity accelerates. He understands now that waiting has consequences. That silence is not empty, it's movement. Emotional clarity doesn't come from comfort. It comes from risk. And fear introduces risk. The risk of losing connection, risk of regret, the risk of realizing he let something meaningful slip through his hands. This is where his emotions become undeniable. He's no longer confused. He's no longer neutral. He may still hesitate, but internally he knows how he feels. Fear also exposes attachment. He starts noticing that his mood shifts based on thoughts of you. That's not coincidence. That's emotional investment. He understands now that indifference wouldn't hurt. Only attachment does. And attachment brings clarity, because it reveals what truly matters when comfort is gone. What's important is that this clarity didn't come from pressure. You didn't threaten to leave. You didn't demand answers. You allowed space for fear to do its work. And fear, when it's genuine, doesn't destroy connection, it defines it. It shows him exactly where his heart stands. As this fear settles and his thinking changes, he becomes more intentional. He considers reaching out not to fill silence, but to protect something meaningful. He thinks about what he'd say, not casually, but carefully. Fear makes him realize that words matter now. Timing matters now. You matter now. This is the moment many people misunderstand. Fear of loss isn't weakness, it's awareness. It's the moment a man stops assuming and starts valuing. And once that switch flips, his emotions become clearer than ever before. He may move slowly, he may struggle with pride, but internally the truth has already landed, because when fear activates emotional clarity, there's no going back to ignorance. He now understands that what he risked losing wasn't attention, it was connection, not messages but meaning. And once a man sees that clearly, it changes how he thinks, how he feels, and how he chooses to show up. When distance settles in and you don't reach out, what truly begins to unfold in his mind is the slow, unavoidable realization of attachment. This isn't something dramatic or instant. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, through moments he didn't expect to feel anything at all. He tells himself he's fine, that this space doesn't mean much, but his emotions start responding before his logic catches up. Attachment doesn't ask for permission. It reveals itself through absence. He starts noticing that his days feel slightly off. Nothing major, just enough to be noticeable. Conversations don't feel as engaging. Distractions don't distract the way they used to. He realizes that your presence had become woven into his emotional routine, not in a dependent way, but in a grounding way. You were part of the rhythm of his life, and now that rhythm has changed. Attachment shows itself when he thinks about telling you something and then remembers you're not there the same way anymore. He pauses. That pause matters. It means you were one of the first people he wanted to share things with. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens through emotional connection built over time. And now, with that connection interrupted, he feels the gap. He begins recognizing patterns he never acknowledged before. How your energy affected his mood. How your words stayed with him longer than others. How your support didn't feel heavy, it felt natural. Attachment becomes visible when he realizes that not everyone can be replaced by someone new. Some connections are specific, some